So, we are, as I said earlier, nearing the end of the reminiscences of Swami Ramakrishnananda. According to my records, we're on page 200, and we're on Sister Devamata's Reminiscences, section 7. Medieval records tell us of a young monk who went to Brother Giles, one of the first followers and closest companions of St. Francis of Assisi, and complained that in his day's schedule there was too much labor and too little prayer. Brother Giles looked at him and replied dryly, "If you would beg of the Lord, first work for him." These words might have been spoken by Swami Ramakrishnananda. So perfectly do they express his mood and attitude of mind. He had a strong belief in prayer, but not as a way to escape from work. Once I heard him admonish a devotee to pray every day and make his prayers reach the Lord by their sincerity and earnestness. But never in my hearing did he offer to pray for anyone, or did others ask him to pray for them. If they had, they might have received the same message that Brother Giles again gave to someone who came and said with lament in his tone, "Pray for me. Why don't you pray for yourself?" was Brother Giles' retort. The Swami had little sympathy with those who made complaint to the Lord or begged of him. Prayer must make one heroic, not beggarly. It must be an act of praise and thanksgiving, a communion, not a recital of needs to be provided. Contact with God should strip one of all sense of need or to use the Swami's own words. If a man will be selfish and beg of the Lord, let him be thoroughly selfish and demand the biggest thing he can think of, God himself. The Swami asked for nothing less. Heaven and even salvation were rewards too paltry to pray for. Heaven, he said, is a place created by Maya to bribe men and to entice him. We have heard of the sirens in mid-ocean who were very beautiful to look at and who would sing so sweetly that the sailors are irresistibly drawn to them, and as soon as the sirens touch them, they are transformed into beasts. So these heavenly pleasures and the senses are like sirens, which entice poor sailors sailing on this ocean of life, and when they hold them in their clutches, they transform them into brutes. The scriptures say, sleeping, eating, and propagating. These we have in common with the lower animals. And how many of us do more than that? We have been transformed by the sirens of Maya until we are little superior to animals. Heaven should never be our ideal, the Swami declared, not only because it is too small a goal to strive for, but also because it holds no promise of further attainment. The constant pursuit of celestial pleasures crowds out all spiritual effort. In heaven, to quote the Swami, there is no leisure. In hell, there is no leisure. Only here on this middle plane, where the two meet, is there leisure in which a soul can try to realize God. If a god, a deva, wishes to attain salvation, he must come down and be born as a man. Heaven is only a place of continual festivities and enjoyments. But the scriptures tell us that we must be absolutely detached from enjoyments of this world and from enjoyments of the next world. An error common to the Occident, but rare in India, is to confound salvation with heaven, to regard them as synonymous. The confusion arises in the West from the fact that their happiness is looked upon as the goal, Well, in India, it is liberation. Swami Ramakrishnananda was very definite on this point when we were talking together one afternoon. Salvation, he explained, does not consist in going to heaven. It is realization that I am God's child. If you are a Vashishta Advaitist, or that I am one with God if you are an Advaitist, both are one and the same. After a moment's pause, he added, so long as a man is struggling for his rights and believes he is the doer, he cannot feel the attraction to God. Only when he sits down and becomes perfectly surrendered does he begin to be drawn upward. Then he says with full conviction, I can do nothing. Lord, do thou act. At once the higher power begins to exert its influence. That man who can throw himself at the feet of the Lord and say, all this is thine, this body, mind, and soul all belong to thee. Of myself I am utterly helpless. Do thou take me. The Lord takes the man and makes his hands, his feet, his eyes, and ears his instruments. He speaks through his mouth. He works through his hands. He walks with his feet, and the man becomes a living representative of God. This is salvation. Again he paused, swept into silence by the swift current of his thought. Then came these closing words, fill your heart with devotion, and your mind will turn naturally to God. The true devotee never thinks of himself. He is so full of the thought of God that his own self is forgotten. That is the best way to attain salvation. Find God and forget yourself. This was the Swami's rule for gaining salvation, and the surest way to find God was by surrendering all to Him. Thus, surrender and liberation became almost identical terms in the Swami's vocabulary. Be wholly surrendered, he said, the moment you can give up everything and know that your own nothingness. At that moment, God vision will come and you will be free. At another time he said, it is possible for a man to attain salvation suddenly by the special grace of God, but it can only be done if he can realize that God is all in all and that he is nothing. If he can realize this, then mukti comes easily. What keeps us from seeing God? Selfishness, egotism, ambition, vanity, pride. The more we can minimize these, the sooner we will come to the goal. If we can get rid of them altogether, then freedom is ours. The more we try to fix our mind on God, the more quickly shall we forget ourselves, and the more quickly shall we reach freedom. The best way to do this is not to think of ourselves in any way, and to try and keep our minds on the presence of God. The man who has realized God will never lack for anything. Whatever he needs will come to him. That is what Christ meant when he said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all things else shall be added unto you. This is literally true, and it has been verified by history. Those men who have given up everything for the sake of the Lord and have felt no other attraction but God are honored and worshipped by the world. Surrender yourself completely to the Lord, then freedom will be yours. A smile will always play on your lips, your face will be shining, and your mind will be calm and peaceful. Next, any questions about any of that we've read or comments? We'll go on to section 8. Devamata, in case some people weren't aware, she was a Western devotee, a Western woman, who spent a great deal of time in India with Swami Ramakrishnananda in the Chennai Center. Okay, section 8. These are from her own reminiscences. Thoroughness in all his thought process was characteristic of Swami Ramakrishnananda. He never left a problem half-solved. He carried it into his conversation, into his reading, into his meditation. He lived with it until he found a solution for it. I remember when he was striving to discover a demonstrable point of contact between physical space and spiritual space. How insistent was his effort. He read the latest books on astronomy. He talked with those who were versed in the science of physics. He spent long hours searching the spaces of his own inner consciousness. Death alone was able to check the ardor of his seeking. The solutions he reached were always definite. There was no vagueness in his mode of thinking. His thought was bold and convincing. Those who came to pay him homage often returned day after day, drawn by his power and the unfailing courtesy of his welcome. It was not his custom to rise when visitors entered, but from his seat on the rug at the far end of the monastery hall, he would greet them with a gracious smile and a friendly wave of his hand, as he requested them to take their places in the group already gathered around him. There were certain devotees who came daily on their way home from the offices, and this led to a continuity of thought in the conversations of succeeding days. One simple question would provide the theme for many gatherings. So when a devotee asked, "What constitutes morality?" the Swami's answer was, "All that takes man to God is morality. Whatever takes man away from God is immorality." There is a social law and a religious law, the Swami continued. God commands us to punish those who disobey him. Why should we punish them? To make them obedient servants? It is true that Christ said, "When a man strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other." But this is meant for those who have given up the world, not for householders. He must punish the wrongdoer in order to protect society. Otherwise, there will be general depredation, the good will be destroyed, and the wicked will prevail. For instance, a man desires nothing but God. He may have a house, and another man may ask for it. The man who cares only for God can say, "Yes, take it, I do not want it." But that would not be possible for a man who still wishes to live in the world. Punishment is not a bad thing. If by punishment you rectify a man, really you have done good for him. You should not allow the wicked to thrive in a field where there are weeds. But if you want to reap a good harvest, you must pluck them out. A revengeful spirit, however, is bad. Satan always tries to revenge himself, but God never felt the least anger towards Satan. They say God sent him down below, but that is not true. Satan went of his own accord because he could not have what he wanted in heaven. The attitude of God towards Satan was one of pity. The attitude of Satan toward God was that of revenge, jealousy, hatred. These feelings are always satanic. Vengeance is based on egotism and malice. The following evening, the conversation turned on the origin of evil, and one of the habitual group asked the question, "How has evil come?" Swami Ramakrishnananda replied, "The dualists say that all the good in man belongs to God, and all the bad belongs to the man himself. The monists say that all belongs to God, both good and bad. In reality, all is God. It is he who actuates the evildoer as well as the saint. A man has sugar candy to sell in the shape of a mango or a bird or a dog. A little boy says to his father, "Please buy me that bird." He thinks it will taste sweeter than the mango or the dog, whereas in reality they are all alike. In the same way, man looks at the world and calls this good and this bad, but as a matter of fact, it is all made out of the same substance. God has created both good and evil, but he is beyond both. He has created the two parties and set them warring against each other, while he looks on as the witness. All this warring of good and bad, pleasure and pain, is merely the play of God. This creation is his laugh. Someone said to Swami Ramakrishnananda, to Sri Ramakrishna, when God could make all people good, why did he create evil? Why did he not make everyone good? Sri Ramakrishna's answer was, then with whom would he play? It is because we are mistaking the real for the unreal for the real. All this seems so serious to us. We are taking the play to be the real thing and the player to be unreal, whereas the player, or God, is the one reality, and the play of creation is absolutely unreal. If you would analyze your own life, you will find out how vague and uncertain it is. A birth, a death, and a little space in between. Out of darkness you have come, into darkness you will go, and you call the space between life. There was no dream, then you dreamed, and again there was no dream. A dream you look upon as unreal, but this little span of life is just as much a dream, just as unreal as the dream that comes to you in sleep. For any moment death may call you away. Swami Ramakrishnananda spoke with great earnestness. The unreality of this outer life, with all its perplexities and distresses, was a subject on which he felt deeply. The outer world never grew real to him. He was never trapped into looking upon the play as the serious thing and giving a lesser place to the player. At all times, the player stood in clear outline before him. He never forgot his divine origin. Man is made in the image of God. That is, man possesses all the powers of God, but in miniature form, he declared. Evolution is a process of rolling out. As we evolve spiritually, the inner powers become more and more manifest. Evolution means wanting something more. It implies a craving for God that makes us evolve spiritually. A craving for outer things or earthly powers brings material evolution. The same craving is in the ant, in the angel, in man, in the siddhas, the seers. Man worships the gods to satisfy this craving. But Bhagavan Sri Krishna cautions everyone against worshipping the gods. Those who worship the gods go to the gods. He says, but my devotees come to me. Which is desirable? Is it desirable to go to the gods or to the Supreme Being? Sri Krishna answers this explicitly. Those who depend on me, I provide for them. I take care of them. I become their servant. The question was asked, can a man ever do as he likes? The Swami's answer was, I think we've all asked that. Sometimes he thinks he's doing what he likes, but in reality, God is guiding all his movements. God is the only doer. Nothing is done by man. The devotee asked again, then what is the use of man's making any effort to be good or to realize God? Swami Ramakrishnananda replied, your very nature is to act. Can you remain perfectly quiet, even for a moment? This body is born to act. Your hands, your feet, your eyes and ears have a natural tendency to action. As long as you must act, you will want to do that which will bring the most desirable results. So long as you act, you will have to try to be good, to be virtuous, to be unselfish, in order to get the desirable results you are seeking. And since God is the most desirable result to be attained, you will have to strive to realize him. Any questions about any of that? We're just zipping through Devamata. I think Swami Ramakrishnananda says it fairly positively and clearly. But if there's any questions or comments, please. Okay, then we are on section 9, and we're almost ending Devamata's reminiscences. An atmosphere of aloneness enveloped Swami Ramakrishnananda. It was not created by a lack of companionship. His intervals of solitude were few, except for those he stole from his sleep at early dawn or in the quiet hours of the night. There was a constant coming and going in the monastery hall where he sat. Members of the household moved back and forth. Visitors came and went. Servants brought offerings of fruit or vegetables. Rare were the solitary moments in the day. Yet the Swami seemed alone. The impression sprang, I believe, from his unconditional detachment. It was so complete that it insulated him. I do not know whether he was conscious of it or not. We never spoke of it specifically. But one day I made a passing reference to it, and his decisive reply was, "I am full of God. What need have I of anyone else?" He said no more. But the thought must have lingered in his mind. For a few days later, he recurred to it again, saying, "Aloneness means singleness. When there are two, there's always fear. We think we need a companion to protect us. If we have to go out in a dark night, or if we have to enter an unlighted house, we want another person with us. We say, 'Let Gopalan come. I do not like to be alone.' In reality, fearlessness exists only when we are alone. When we are alone, we can dance or sing or make faces or do whatever we like. But let a friend come, and at once we begin to be careful about what we do. There comes a sense of constraint. We grow self-conscious. Fear exists when there is duality. Fearlessness exists when there is only one. Since we cannot be happy so long as we fear, we shall not be able to find peace until we can say, 'I am alone, I need nothing.'" These words reveal Swami Ramakrishnananda's perfect freedom from human dependence. His being was complete in his contact with God. Yet there was no lack of love for mankind in his heart. He was preeminently generous in his attitude towards humanity. To condone or to forgive cost him no effort. He made little of mistakes. If he spoke of a person's failings, he did it quite frankly. It was without malice. His heart was filled with loving kindness for every living being. No love is really love that has for its opposite hate, he said one day. True love is always inclusive and universal. So long as a man has an enemy and cannot bear to have any good come to that man, he cannot know what real love is. That is why Christ tells us, if someone strikes us on one cheek, we should turn to him the other. If he takes our cloak, we should give him our coat also, no matter who it is. Until we are willing to do this, we cannot feel true love. Real love must be all-embracing. Not long after, the question was asked one evening by a visitor, "How can we cultivate love for God?" "The nature of love is to love the beautiful," the Swami replied. "When you see a beautiful person, your heart goes out to him spontaneously. God is the most beautiful being in the whole universe, so it should not be difficult for you to love him. Now it seems to you easier to love the world than to love God. That is because the ego blinds our sight so that we cannot perceive the beauty of God. This ego must be conquered. It is always a falsifier. It places itself on the throne which belongs to God and tries to hide God. So long as the ego is on the throne, we can never hope to see or love God. Hatred and anger are signs of ego. If a man hates anyone or gets angry with anyone, you may be sure he has not conquered his ego and cannot feel true love in his heart. What is the ego? A mere soap bubble. One blow will break it and reveal its hollowness. We must get rid of the ego and reach the state where we can say sincerely, not I, but thou. When you have been able to put down the ego, love of God will come of itself." Swami Ramakrishnananda was peculiarly inexpressive regarding his feeling for outer things. I heard him voice very rarely a personal like or dislike. His judgments were not formed by the reaction of a person or object created in him. They were measured by their relation to an ideal or to the universe, by the largest unit of measure. The whole fervor of his being flowed out when he talked of God or his master. But for lesser things, he showed something akin to unconcern. Even the beauties of nature did not always move him. I recall one evening when I tried to draw his attention to an unusually wonderful sunset. His response was, "This is the hour when one should think of God, not of his creation." This apparent disregard of outer beauty arose not from insensibility to nature, but from intense inwardness. The Swami's thought was centered in central beauty. That alone was real to him. "What are the Himalayas?" he exclaimed once. "Just rock." Excuse me. I think I inhaled a fly. "What are the Himalayas?" he exclaimed once. "Just rock piled on rock. Look at all this that is outside. The countless solar systems and the galaxies. The earth and the vastness of the heavens is only a minute point. Of what significance is it? The only reality in this universe is God." With this chapter, the covers of my notebook are closed. The teachings they contain were spoken by Swami Ramakrishnananda in 1909, during my early days of my contact with India. The Swami passed away in 1911. Through the years since then, I have treasured these records of his thought, awaiting an opportunity to share them with the world. Some of them have appeared in my previous writing. Those that remain have been set down in these reminiscences. A mighty voice echoes through these pages. The mighty one to whom it belonged can have no worthier memorial than his own words. His message has been given. My task is done. Okay. And we are finished with Deva Mata's reminiscences. We have a couple more from some of the Swamis in the order. Next week will be Swami Vishuddhananda. Any questions or comments on what was said, John?
Just want to say that was amazing. Her reminiscences. They're so specific. Just think of her carrying around all the time.
I know.
It's wonderful.
It is. I mean, they are extremely specific answers to questions that we all ask.
A lot of Christian quotations.
Yes, well, Sri Ramakrishna said that Sardananda and Ramakrishnananda had been disciples of Christ in a previous incarnation. Who knows? Any other comments or... Okay. Then we shall do the announcements. Saturday evening at 5 o'clock, we'll have a reading of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna here in the temple at 5. Next Sunday's lecture is Swami Medhananda, and his topic is Fake It Till You Make It. Then a week Wednesday, we'll have Swami Ramakrishnananda. We'll continue reading the reminiscences until we finish the book. And as I say, the next book will be Swami Sardananda, Glimpses of a Great Soul. And then the last weekend of this month, Swami Sarvadevananda will be here. And his topic is Vivekananda and the Interfaith Movement. That Saturday night, the 28th, we will not have a reading of the Gospel. We will have Swami Sarvadevananda's class on the Bhagavad Gita, which starts at 5. Okay, any other questions? Good to see you all on Zoom. Like to see everyone healthy and there. Okay, we'll end with Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. See you when we see you.